whether you're in here or not. I don't know who's listening. So on Friday, Miss Blackman's children were in here, and she had a notes video. So we played that instead of continuing on with our notes, which meant that everyone else got an extra day to work on their vocab, which makes me super sad if your vocab's not done. So that's the first thing, like, is your vocab done? I need your vocab. And when you say what vocab, that long giant list of things, we're supposed to define.
Did you take this sheet up with the PowerPoint?
I want it. If you got it done, I want it. I haven't taken it up, but I do want it as of now. I meant to take it up Friday, but got distracted. Okay, so where is your vocab? So at the moment, you should have, well, I haven't typed it in, but all I have written down in my grade book thus far is the goofy participation grade I give you every week for just being alive. And everyone seems to get perfect scores, and some people get up to perfect scores. That's all I have for you at the moment. I need to rectify that. The next thing I need is that worksheet from last, or like 2 weeks ago, really, that was on lurking variables and how lurking variables can cause things to be common response, or there were 2 other relationships as well, and they all started with C's, which is annoying, but you have to know I'm in here.
Is this in your Google Classroom? Because I can't find mine.
Yes. I think there are also extras in last week, which I just can't tell you what date it was, Sally.
I'll figure it out.
If not, I'll make you a copy if you remind me. Okay, so if you got your vocab, turn it in, that's great. I forgot when we said the vocab test was going to be.
Thursday?
We said Wednesday, because I wasn't here, because I'm not here Wednesday. Is anyone going to die if it's Wednesday? Yeah. Okay, I thought so. Vocab test Wednesday. And I kind of think we might die if it's Wednesday, just because we haven't gone through a lot of it, so we're going to postpone it until we get through at least this set of, like, this little cute handout of notes.
I mean, honestly, if we could just have the terms you would have on the test to study, we could probably have this. We all have our own definition of terms.
So true. So and I changed my whole mind. I think we'll still have a Wednesday, but I'll let you use what you just turned in. I'll let you use your vocab name. I'll let you use what you have in mind, like your notes or whatever. I'll make you a copy in a second.
Are you trying to get the definition from us, or you want an example when you give us the word?
I don't care what you did on. I don't care what you did on this. As long as you know what explanatory response means, or you know what any of these things mean, that's fine.
So we can use that on the.
Yes, we'll do that on Wednesday. That way you can use that. Yeah.
I know it's open note to understand.
Yes, we're gonna make Wednesday's vocab test open note, which means if you had a Quizlet, I'm gonna have to leave her a note that is okay for you. Is anyone else did theirs electronically?
Yeah.
You might want to, but you might, I appreciate this about her. It's the same way as mine. I'm just kind of strict, which I appreciate.
Well, she is strict. Don't be leaving her with your baby out.
Yes, I have so much.
Say get your baby out.
Please tell you. Okay. Since I'm not gonna be here on Wednesday, I'm going to leave you this vocab thing. He's right. That's the way to rectify that. That way it can get over with and be done. The other thing we're going to do is, I keep hinting that there was a free response question about linear regression last year. So I'm going to leave you that free response question as well. You have out your cute little handout. We're going to keep going on it. I was going to give you, I don't know, I have handouts sometimes that I think are so helpful, and then they tend to be like, oh my gosh, just how many handouts are you going to give me? I forgot, for the bajillionth time, to print off the chapter 4 homework, which works out to your advantage. The longer it takes me to remember to print that out, the less problems I can expect from you.
This is true.
I did, however, remember to print out the warm-ups, which are, again, just old multiple choice questions. Some of these multiple choice questions get reused. Like, I've seen a couple of these pop up on the test. The very last page has the answers.
Oh, wow.
The very last page has the answers. Now, some of these say chapter 5, some of these say chapter 4. That's just darn textbook people. It was chapter 5 until this, it was chapter 5 until they got a newer edition, which we've adopted now. And now that we've adopted the newer edition, the chapter we're on is technically chapter 4. So let me give you these in case you're wanting to get ahead and practice those. Because some of us rock it on free response, and it's easy to just struggle bust it on the multiple choice. one suggestion I would have for you is, are you actually looking through these warm-ups? We don't normally, because I talk too much as is life, they're all your babies. Normally I talk too much as is life, because we have a lot to cover. So we don't go over these explicitly during class. But seriously, if Jana went home and she did warm-up 1, number 2, and she got stuck, if she asked me the next day, I would stop and go over it. Or you could do what Shalia does slyly. She'll work a homework thing. Nope.
Just practice for us.
Just practice for you. Try to set that straight. Shalia quietly comes in when y'all aren't here and asks me questions about homework stuff to make sure she's on the right track. Okay, and then here's another handout that has not that much to do with what we're talking about today. But I found it and thought it was useful because it actually answered some of my own questions. So, hence why I'm giving it to you now. If you're one of those who are like me and like things to be in order, I would put this with my chapter 3 stuff. In fact, I might put it with my chapter 2 or chapter 1 stuff. Okay, so I gave you this cute little handout right now that says univariate and bivariate data analysis. All that's meaning is, are we examining only one variable? Are we examining 2 variables and like the relationship between them? If it's the 2 variables, then we normally make a scatter plot, do the least squares regression line, all those kind of things. And with the 1 variable, that's when we normally just look at the 5-number summary, draw a box plot, that kind of thing. But just comparing those two, because again, we've done them all as separate entities, but on the actual exam, or like in real life, these might be mixed up together, where sometimes it's 1 variable and sometimes it's 2. And then for forever, I was being a blind last chapter. I hate it when I was blind. And Louise said it the other day, I guess he can be Batman now, because it was smart. Louise said it the other day, and it was genius, and I didn't catch on. So I needed this to tell me. Do you remember all those annoying chapter 3 worksheets with the calculator screens? And one of them would say S, and then something about R squared, and we never used S.
Yeah.
S is actually for spread, as we thought. S is for spread, but it's the standard deviation of the residuals. It measures the spread about the least squares regression line. So S is something. It is standing for something. It's just not what we're using to interpret stuff.
So do we need that?
No, you don't. I mean, you don't need it. I just kept thinking, what on earth is S for? Why is there an S on here? And it is for spread. But again, we use R squared to measure how that line is fitting the data. Well, actually, we turn R squared into R, but, well, unless you're Kinsey and you always interpret it as a percentage, which is good. So, no, that's good. The rest of us aren't. That's good. Great, in fact. Okay. Whew. I mean, that's all those things.
Sure.
Back to what we were doing forever ago. So, all this interpreting junk is great. None of it matters, but we can't actually design our own experiment. Before you design your own experiment, you have to select your sample. And when you select your sample, you have to do so strategically because, as we discussed the other day, a convenient sample is not very strategic. In fact, it's kind of lame of you. And you're not going to get very good results.
Where's Jackson?
I don't know.
She hasn't been here all day.
Oh, dude, that's why. Okay.
And Shalia?
I don't know.
Well, Shalia was
I
here.
thought she was here.
Like last period.
I don't know if she's not.
That's concerning. Oh, yes. This is the one I would get when you sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else is. Maybe not.
Well, I guess you can make them out easier. But you know what?
Or practice too. I think it's other gonna say out of your 5 math. Taking all math. You already took all better than us here.
Don't even try that. What? Wait.
Oh.
Yes. Yes.
Me too. Me too.
Yes. Will you let me do the rest of the notes and I'll sign all the things? Any of the things you want. Okay. Whew. Goodness gracious. Sometimes brain is terrible anyway. We were discussing, and hopefully you've learned these words via writing the vocab. Who knows? You gotta learn the terms. A convenient sample and how it was the lazy man's way. a voluntary response and how it's like if you have to call in some number. Only those who really care about an issue are actually going to take the time to call in. Bias is if we're trying to favor someone over the other. For instance, since I am a girl, maybe when I'm selecting samples, I purposely choose girls. Like, sometimes we don't even mean to. It's an involuntary bias. But I was telling Louise an example of bias the other day that happened in school. So we had a faculty meeting, and Dr. Hester was bragging because he said across the board, the number of people taking the ACT is continuing to increase at a younger and younger age level. And here was his data to back that up. He said that on Wednesday during the PSATs, the freshmen had a practice ACT. And he said that he went in their classrooms and he asked them by show of hands who plans on taking the ACT this year as a freshman. And that quite a few raised their hand. And that was his reasoning as to why more freshmen are taking the ACT than ever. Why is that not a good analysis or a good experiment?
Unless you've done it for more than 1 year, you can't really tell.
This is all true unless they, we actually have to see did they follow through and sign up. Of course, people say like I'm gonna lose weight this year, and then they don't. So we do need to actually check up and follow through. But what else is wrong with that?
He's the principal.
He is the principal. Don't you think people are going to answer a certain way because he is the principal?
Yep.
If he came in here and asked us something, we would say, oh, yes, whatever you say, Dr. Hester. You are the principal. We say what you want.
Like, if I would have been asked, they'd probably be more honest.
Yes. So we would need to send someone else. That was one issue. Is it possible?
I got dressed over by my teacher because my leggings or my shirt was not long enough for my leggings.
Right.
It was. My button covered.
Okay, that's fine.
And so my teacher was like, all right, well, this was on Belton. So
2 years ago, okay.
You need to go see Mr. Belton. And I was like, okay. Well, he wasn't there, so I went to Dr. Hester. And I got a note from him. He was like, whatever, I don't care. He's going to do this again. And I took it to the teacher. She was like, well, I didn't tell you to do that. I told you to go to the center. And I was like, the principal can't go there.
How is this a story about Dr. Hester?
Huh?
How is this a story about Dr. Hester?
He excused me for
Oh, okay. Okay. Moving along. So, back to samples. That's interesting. But moving along, back to samples. His sample is skewed because he's kind of suggested, back to eventually we're going to get into the wording of the question and also who asked the question. Because he is the principal, of course he's given a certain response. Okay. So we finally got to, how to get a good sample last week. You want something random. Use a process of chance. The best way to do it, and the most used way, is a simple random sample or a stratified random sample, and possibly even a cluster sample. So those are the 3 different topics we're going to talk about today. And once we get done with this handout, I actually have a activity or like a experiment for you to do and figure out the differences between them. Okay, so with a simple random sample, every individual, you can't see what I'm doing. Thank you. Every individual in a population has, I'm writing cricket today, an equal chance to be selected.
What?
And I'm writing cricket today.
Okay.
Equal chance to be selected.
So weird.
So every individual in a population has an equal chance to be selected. So this is ideal.
Miss Compton?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Cody. I'm lost to check out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, so, but why? So the next thing we're going to talk about is a stratified random sample. And a strata is just really a group. So we're trying to group. I think of strata, and I think of group.
In anatomy, it's like layered.
Well, and that's, I mean, I'm just simplifying it. It really is more complicated. But that's what I'm thinking of. When I think of a stratified random sample, I think of we're grouping. And we're strategically selecting. Strata layers, that makes sense. So if we're thinking through sampling, like at school, if we do a simple random sample and we select 100 people, we have, no offense, but more sophomores and freshmen and seniors. So when we select 100 people, we're probably going to, by chance, get more sophomores and freshmen than we are seniors. And that might not be what we want. We might want an equal representation from each grade level. We might want 50 freshmen, 50 sophomores, 50 juniors, 50 seniors. Because if we're selecting, again, from the entire population, there are less of y'all than there are the underclassmen. So if we want to do a stratified random sample, that's so, if we break our sample into groups based on some characteristic, then we choose a simple random sample from each strata. So let me say that smaller and better. If we break sample into groups, I'm having a day. Break sample into groups. Choose a simple random sample from each group. Combine the simple random samples to form our sample. And you're like, but I don't understand. You're doing a bunch of simple random samples. Why would you do, instead of just doing one simple random sample? But it's like we were discussing, if we break our sample into groups based off of certain characteristics like freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, grade level. Or if we break it into groups of we only want 50 men, we only want 50 women. Or we might break it into groups like only the non-drivers and the drivers. There's lots of ways we could do this depending on the results we're trying to get. But if we're wanting people equally represented, it makes sense if we're pulling from the entire population of the school to say a certain number from each grade level. Yes, dear?
Would it be more equal, like, among the grade levels if you did, like, the same percentage of each grade?
That would make perfect sense. I think that would be a terrific experiment.
Okay.
So if you understood that, let's say seniors make up 15%, and if you're doing a study of however many people, then use 15% of that to only be seniors. I think that would be genius. That would be very good.
So you're saying not use like the numbers, you're saying out of 100% of the body of the school board, you're saying
Yes.
15% is senior, use that percentage.
Yes, and that's what she's suggesting, which is great. But all of Stratified is not even going that deep. They're saying if we had like 2,000 people and we were selecting 100 for our sample, well, instead of just doing a random 100, why don't we do 25 random freshmen, 25 random sophomores, 25 random juniors, 25 random
But I was
seniors?
saying, wouldn't you want the same percentage of each class? Or?
She's saying since the seniors aren't as popular as the freshmen and sophomores as we're discussing, maybe they shouldn't get 25. Maybe it should be 30, 30, 30, 10 for the seniors. I don't know the actual percentages. It would still be stratified because we're selecting based upon the different groups. It would still be stratified. And then the next kind is called a cluster sample. If we break our sample into groups that are located near each other, and we call those clusters. So break sample into groups of individuals. Break sample into groups of individuals that are located near each other. Clusters. Then choose a simple random sample of the clusters. And last, all individuals. I'm writing over space. All individuals. Good thing the last one's short. In the randomly selected clusters. are included in the sample. So this one sounds more complicated than it actually is. It says, break sample into groups of individuals that are located near each other, parentheses clusters. Then choose a simple random sample of the clusters. And last, all individuals in the randomly selected clusters are included in the sample. So let's say we're wanting to learn something specifically about the athletes at school. So when we break them into groups or clusters, we're going to say the different sports they play. And we do anticipate that there is some overlap because someone can play basketball and football. Like, we understand that. But let's say we randomly put all the different sport types in a hat and we pull out 2 sport types. We're going to do girls tennis and we're going to do football. Then, once we've selected, so that's choosing a simple random sample of the clusters. We've selected random groups. And now we're going to select randomly sample people from those groups. So when we start actually getting our sample, we're only going to go to the girls' tennis team people. We're only going to consider the people who play football. There's nothing wrong with that.
Miss Compton,
Yes, ma'am.
is Cody Olaf? Check it out.
Yes, ma'am, he's already left.
He's already left. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There's nothing wrong with this. It really depends on what kind of experiment you're wanting to design. If you're really wanting to know specifically about, like I'm saying, like something about sports-related issue and you only do sports groups, that would make sense. If I'm designing a random study, normally I wouldn't automatically think cluster sample, but there's nothing wrong with this cluster sample. But when my go-to is simple random, or when I'm really concerned about like grade levels or like men, women, I do a stratified. Okay, and then the last word on this page is inference.
How do you distinguish between, because there's so many, like, I know these are all groups, I've seen multiple of these groups, so break samples into groups, and this one's cluster sample groups.
Okay, so it depends on the depends on the setup of the situation. If they took, like, let's say just this class. If we took everybody in this class and just selected 5 people, simple random sample. If we took everybody in this class, split them into boys and girls, and then selected 3 from each, that's going to be a stratified because we broke you into groups, boys and girls, and then I selected from there. And then the cluster is going to be we broke you into boys and girls. I put boys and girls in the hat. I drew out girls. I'm only selecting the group from the girls. But it wasn't like I decided in my head, since I'm a girl, I'm only doing girls. It was by chance that I happened to choose, I'm specifically focusing on the girls. And again, I don't really think I would design it with a cluster, but there are some situations where that is needed. But if I get to design it, I normally do a simple random sample unless, like I'm saying, I feel like one group's going to be picked on if we don't do a stratified. And you'll get what I mean by that in a minute. Well, once we do this next activity about rolling down the river, whenever that gets here. Okay. And an inference is really trying to, do you know what an inference is?
Good guess.
Yeah, so if we're trying to draw conclusions about a population based on the sample data. So it's when we, it's the process, I can't get it right today, the process of drawing conclusions. I see that. The process of drawing conclusions about a population, I'm going to put POP for population, based on the sample data. So if we are to design our experiment strategically, we purposely pick our sample using probably a simple random sample, a stratified, or a cluster. Then what we hope is when we try to make some sort of conclusion, like we've learned this, we hope it applies not just to our sample, but to the entire population. Wasn't that kind of the whole point, to apply it to everybody? Okay, are there any questions about these vocab words? Okay, well then the next page we're supposed to go to, because I didn't fold correctly if you recall. I don't care.
Do a student named Lyric?
Huh? Lyric, yes, I do. Okay. So the next page I want to go to is the one that says identifying the whatever. That'll work. Let's go to the other side. Identifying the whatever. So identify the population and the sample of a study. Identifying response and convenient sampling method. No, I don't want to do that next. I didn't copy correctly. We already discussed this. Okay. I want to go to 3 ways to take a simple random sample. Okay, so I've not spent a lot of time stressing over this because life is stressful enough. But on the free response portion, there is one question that is worth more than the other questions. Like a much higher percentage more. And what it tends to be is some sort of experimental design, where you get to design your own experiment like this. Now, it's not always. Sometimes it's a random hot mess, and it's hard to prepare for because it changes each year. There's not like a set pattern. But there is potential that at some point in a free response and in the super free response question that you're going to have to actually design your own experiment. So if you're asked to design, like how to take your own simple random sample, the easiest way, and the way I like to reference every time, even though it's stupid if there's more than 300 or whatever, I get this is stupid when it comes to a large population. But the easiest way to explain is to use the hat method. Okay, so if we were going to use the hat method in this room right now, I would go around the room and assign everybody a number. Louise is 1, Samantha's 2, Hunter's 3, and so forth. And then when I pull random numbers out of the hat, if I pull out a 3, I've pulled out Hunter. So we write the names or numerical labels of each individual in the population on the same size slips of paper. We place the slips in a hat, and then we pull out however many you were supposed to have. If we wanted a sample of 5, we pulled out a 5. You know me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. But of course that's not the best, so you can read the next part about use technology. I don't know if you know where to go to do a random number on your calculator. You can look at that for a hot second while I talk great, and then I'll show you how.
Gonna keep it recording?
Yeah.
If only Jackson was here to build the silence.
I can be Jackson. No, I can't.
I'm
No,
gonna
sure,
put
Jackson.
in the middle of the night, sneak and creep up my stairs,
Louise.
and come into my room where I sleep,
None of the recording, Louise.
track off the sheets, insulting me nude,
What is
spicy hot Mexican hot sauce down my
So-
weenie hole.
After the hat method, because let's face it, hat method's great for like our room of like 10, 12, 15. But eventually there's too many of us where I'm not going to put 200 slips in a hat and pull out from there. Now, if you have to design your own experiment, I might say that. But you know that's complete BS because no one's actually going to take the time to do that in real life. That's too long. There has to be a faster way. So you can use a random number generator, which there is one on your calculator. So if you turn on your calculator,
Wow.
My calculator can just make up a number.
your calculator can just make up a number. Now, what's really creepy is that odds are, if we do this right now, we might all end up getting the same random number because you've not made your calculator do this before. They all tend to start off with the same number. So if this happens, we're not going to freak out. I don't know what the common number is.
Random numbers?
Yes, and how did you get there?
Okay.
Yes.
I was playing with it during PSAT because we couldn't use our phone.
Okay, then how did you get there?
You push the app button.
Where's that?
Okay, so if you ever don't know, if you're ever looking for something and you think your calculator can do something, it's kind of like your phone if you have an iPhone or whatever, and there's an app store. If you press apps, it lists off all the things.
Where's that?
It's all the way down.
And apps is next to math.
Oh, there it is.
And if you scroll,
Is it prompts him?
Yeah, and then numbers.
Wait. Okay. And then how
you can go to probability simulation, and you have to push a key. And then you can do random numbers, but you can also do other ways. So maybe you want to do a simulation where you toss a coin over and over again. Maybe Samantha is beyond the hat. Maybe she wants to do this differently.
Random numbers?
So random numbers.
Look what it looks like.
So you can press it and it will draw.
Wow, Miss Compton, look at mine.
Now what?
That's great. Press enter and keep going.
Wait, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't even have it. It's like a small.
Yeah, you're supposed to. So this is a great way, and she's right. And what this has done, and the reason I like hers is because it's giving us a bunch of random numbers at once. So I have 37, 6, 21, 17, 30, and 2. I have a bunch of random numbers at once. Hers is giving us lots. There is a way to make calculator only do one at a time. Oh. So instead of doing that,
No,
you went to apps.
I know. Yeah, I don't have it.
You don't have probability simulator?
But
At
I
all.
have, like, programmed my calculator for time, so I need that really quick. Am I gonna need it?
No.
You said it so fast.
For math. Because I've programmed my calculator for, like, calculators.
You cheat, basically.
No, I don't cheat. I know
Sure,
what
sure.
programs you can't use.
Exactly.
Like on the AC2 website, there's a page where it's like programs you're not allowed to use.
What if you do? How do you know that they don't use them?
They
Well,
don't have to
it's
do
not
that yours. As long as yours is one of the
I
legit
feel
kinds,
like
they don't
if I
check
do
it.
use them, God
Oh,
forbid,
so you
they
can
fall
use
away,
them.
so I don't use them.
It's not going to punish you. It's
Okay.
gonna give you more.
No, that's great. And what she's done is terrific, and it does give you a giant list. However, there's a much easier way. So if instead you press math, then we scroll over to obviously probability because we're wanting to do something random. There is a random number integer, but we probably want it to not be repetitive because back to once we've selected Luis for the group, if he's number 1, once we pulled out the 1, we don't want the 1 again. So we want to choose the one that says random and an integer, not repetitive.
Miss Compton?
Yes, dear.
How do we change like the range of the numbers?
So you can't, well, I typed something wrong. You can't necessarily change the range there. Yes, you can. I'm being stupid. There's a way to do this much better. I'm being blind.
Mine's only going up to like 40, so.
I'm getting so.
Why is it like, I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. They're being crazy.
She said.
I'm always blind.
The highest number I've gotten is 39.
I got.
I don't even know what you're doing.
We play
Let me play with it.
That's so funny to
I
you.
don't know. It's just, you're just like, oh, dude, I want to play the calculator. Man.
I hate it when I go blind. Like I did it this morning. Why?
I
Like
said blind just now.
so dumb.
I hate it when I go blind.
Okay, while I continue to mess with my calculator, why is this not feasible on the actual exam?
It's gonna take you long.
No, be more specific. It's not going to take too long. There's a much faster way. I'm being blind and I can't find the easy fast button.
Is it because?
Why is there a reason we're not going to do this on the test?
Is it because it?
Why doesn't it let me clear these?
I don't know. I can't hear. What? Say it
Is
again.
it because it doesn't go above 40?
No. That's got nothing to do with it. Second, quit to get out of things, Sally.
So what does random mean?
And then second, off and turn it all off. Random means like a random number.
So why when you graph it, it looks like this?
Random clear.
You wouldn't graph it. Why would you graph
said go
it?
to math and then go to random. And then it's only like.
Sally, I feel like you should buy a t-shirt that says I'm so confused. It's like half the
Do I say that a lot?
time. Yeah.
I am confused a lot. Wait, okay.
Yeah, I feel better than
I'm back will say like ellipses like a lot.
when
Why do they have a grade?
Oh, it's clear now. Okay.
It dies.
Am I just supposed to know all the things?
I mean, you are an LP staff.
Yeah, you
I'm-
are the teacher. I mean,
What? Say your words again.
Why is there a grade?
I did not say this.
That's not one of the courses offered by the state. It's not a class offered by the state. There's not a regular statistics either. It's either AP or bus, or none at all.
No, it's just looking at point one.
Yeah,
dude, well,
I'm
you
pretty
flip
sure
a
it's-
coin. I want to flip a coin.
and
Yeah.
the animation.
Science school. Science flip a coin.
Okay, but you still haven't answered my question, so I'm still unsatisfied. Why are we not going to do this? I swear it's like 2 seconds, and I just can't think. Y'all, I don't know. I can't think when y'all are in the room because asking me questions at the same time, ADHD done kicked in. Why are we not going to use a random number generator on the actual AP exam?
I don't know why.
Why is that not a
It's not
feasible possibility?
sustaining
It's not a
your
feasible.
data.
Okay, who is grading your tests? A human, and how are they supposed to know
Yeah.
what you saw on your calculator screen? Are they just that good?
Don't you write it down somehow, some way?
I assume, but again, back to when we score things, we have a rubric. If everyone has a hot mess of a random number, how are we going to make a rubric? So we don't do this because everyone has different random numbers, so that's never going to work out for us. We need there to be a way where we can have, it's a random number, but for all of us to get the same random number answer.
That's not very random, is it?
Okay, so let me actually show you. So there's something called a random digit table. So let's look at it. It's actually on the next page.
I thought we can use that on the test side though.
A random digits table, it will be actually given to you. So if you, in fact, if you look at your book, has one in the back. Oh. Your book has one. And a random digits table is what we would use instead. Not that there's anything wrong with our calculator and how great it is for giving us random digits, but the fact is that no one knows and is going to get the exact same answer as you, so it's hard to make a rubric. So instead, they will give you a random digits table. And in fact, they probably won't give you one this complicated or this big. They'll probably just give you a couple lines from a random digits table. And so depending on how many digits you need is how many digits you look. So let's say we're wanting to do a 20-person thing because we have like 12 people in here or whatever. So let's make sure there's more than that. Let's say we wanted to do 20 people. Well, that's 2 digits. So our first answer is 71, but isn't 71 bigger than 20?
This is true.
And then the next 2 numbers are 48, but isn't 48 bigger than 20?
Also true.
And then 70, and I get that there's a gap, but the only reason they're putting gaps is because you and I are blondes, as a case in point. So sometimes we just don't see things. So they put a gap just to keep them straight after so many digits. It doesn't mean you should think of the gap and ignore it. So 70 is the next number. It's not bigger than 20, so it's out. So we would keep going until we actually got one that was 20, which is not going to work. It's not looking good. Let's say we were doing, well, it's actually, I don't know, Ms. Compton, why can't we read? Use a random digits table to choose a simple random sample of 10 students from our class. Apparently, we've labeled our students 10 randomly numbered students. So, if it's a number 1 through 10, then it's a single digit number, yes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like most of them are single digits. So our first random number would be 7. Our second random number 1. Third random number 4. Fourth random number 8. We're not going to use 7 again. We've already used him. 0, we probably assigned our kids 0 through 9. Like Louisa 0, Samantha 1, because we wanted it to be 1 digit. And so 0 is a person. 9, can't do 9 again, can't do 8 again, can't do 4 again. 2, and we could keep on going like that. Normally, they're never singular ones. Normally, it's like a sample of 1 to 500. So if we were doing a sample of, and then if we're doing a sample of 1 to 500, oh, words are coming now. Good. I'm not stupid today. So let's say instead we're wanting to do a sample of 500 people, so 1 to 500 people, which sounds nasty. To read a simple random digits table, to read this random digits table, I don't know why I added simple. To read a random digits table, you have to think through how many digits you need. So when we were talking about this, we only needed 1 digit. That's why we were only looking at 1 digit. But now that we need 1 to 500, we're really looking at 3 digits, like 001 to 500. So if we happen to see 001, we're talking about the very first person. If we see 007, we're talking about the 7th person. But we have to do 3 digits. So the first person we would select is 714. 714 is too big for 500, so we wouldn't select him. 870, too big again. 998, too big again. 429 would actually be our first selection. Then 077, well, that would work.
I figured out how to change the range.
That's good. Tell me in a second. We wholly went down a different path that you just ignored, which sadly is important. 148 would be the next one. Then 636, again, too big. 168. 347. then 052, and I don't know how many we're selecting. Let's say we stop there. But literally, you just go straight down the line of how many digits you're wanting. So if you're wanting a sample of 300 or so, you need the first 3 digits. A sample of 90, you only need the first 2 digits. But anything over what your sample was, over the 500, you're going to exclude. It doesn't count. Because there was no person 714. But there was a person 077. So while this is much stupider, I do get that. And it's really not as random because, like Louise is wanting to point out, but they gave it to you. It's really not random then. Totally get that too. But they need to have some sort of way that we're getting random numbers, and all of us are getting the same random numbers. So the way they're going to do that is with this kind of a table. Okay.
What's the point of that, though? Because we're all going to have the same random numbers. Why just give us the numbers?
They want to see if you can read a random digit table, and 2, technically it still is randomized because they did it for you. They did the random selection for you, but they randomly selected some line on some random digits table to give you. So I get that it was technically random. You just didn't need to make it random,
Right.
which is why you're annoyed with that because you didn't get to make it random, but they did make it random. Okay, so I don't know what I was saying. Sally had something she was going to say, so let's go see about what Sally says before I talk more about random digits table. Sally, you had something you were going to say about how you could select the range.
Yeah, you can do it.
How did you do it?
Hold on, let me get back to it. There's a thing at the bottom. It says escape, draw, set, adding, period. So you go to set, then change the settings.
You're still in the probability simulation?
Yeah, nothing.
You can't change it to a 3-digit though.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Draw.
You can only do 2 digits.
The one thing that's good about it is it does let you accept whether or not you add for repeats. I swear there's a much easier, simpler way without having to go to the probability simulation, but it's left my brain at the moment, which is terrible. A terrible thing to happen. Okay. I will come back to that. Yes. Okay, so if you have a random digits table, back to your notes, you would label each individual with the same number of digits. So like we were talking about, if we're doing a sample of 300, I know if we're thinking 1 to 300, but really the first person has to be 001. So if you understand that, you're good. Randomize by reading consecutive groups of digits from left to right in a line. Ignore groups that are not labeled or duplicates, as we did when we were doing the single selection and we saw 8 twice. We knew to ignore him. That's kind of common sense. But one reason you might want to focus on that is if you're explaining, again, there's a slight potential that you're getting to set up your own experiment and you're going to explain how you're selecting random people. Every single time I say this hat setup, because it's just easiest to explain on paper, everyone gets a number, put it in a hat, draw out so many from the hat. But again, if you're trying to be fancy, as Louise will try to be, because who's really going to pull 300 names out of a hat? If you're going to say random digits table, you've got to make sure you say something about ignoring the duplicates. Because at least with the hat, once I pull you out, you're out for good. Or I need to say something like that. So when you set up your thing, you've got to say you're ignoring the duplicates. I see. Yes, we can stop the things. Bring them to me. I can't move. Alex, I'm going to give you all a 5. Just don't write on my strips. Okay, that's fine. Then give everyone a 5 and collect my strips. Will you go press stop on that? It's the red one, I think. I don't know. You're smart.